So it's actually pretty easy for you to find motivated sellers who are begging to sell, because almost everybody else out there that's doing real estate and wholesaling, they're doing it wrong. They're spending a ton of money getting these big lists, chasing people who'll never sell, instead of going after the few who actually want to sell. And I've done hundreds of deals, all types of profits, everywhere from 30, 50, 60, $70,000 wholesale to six-figure flips. And what I've learned is that if you stick to the spear fishing strategy that I've taught before, you will generate the consistent high margin deal flow that I talk about on every single one of these calls. So let me show you how it works and why it feels almost illegal when you do it the right way. So first, like we always talk about, it all revolves around your buyers list. Before you ever touch a seller list, you got to start with your buyers. You don't find deals. Everybody just starts with, let's just start marketing, right? Let's just start throwing a bunch of money in marketing, direct mail, cold calling, text message blasts, whatever it is. But all that does is waste a lot of your capital and effort. When instead, what you should be focusing on is, where's the demand? If I was to get a deal, where would it sell for the highest? Who will pay the most? Because guess what? That's where the high margins are done. Not just getting somebody that says, yes, I want to sell. Oh, but John, look, I use the 70% formula because that shit hasn't worked in over a decade. But yet people are still relying on the 70% formula like it's this formula that's supposed to answer all your questions. How many of you have gotten a property locked in for that 70% formula, yet when you're ready to sell it, you can't find a buyer that wants it? Every buyer wants it at what you have it or even less than that. So a lot of investors skip this part because if you have the deal, the buyers will find you, right? Every novice investor thinks that. That's just what it is. Only novice investors think that. You understand? Who determines what a deal is? Your buyers do. When you build the buyer first, you reverse engineer your profit. I want you to let that sink in, and I want you to take note of that. When you build your buyers list first, you reverse engineer your profit. You know exactly who you're selling to before you even start marketing. This is going to play a massive factor in how you generate your deals. So here's how you do it. And when I talk to a new buyer, I ask these three specific questions. Number one, how do you fund your deals, right? Why does this matter? Cash, private, hard money. I want to know exactly how they're closing. And if they need to check with a partner, if they're not the real buyer, if they don't fully understand what the closing process even looks like, I need to know that. Because if they tell me a hard money loan and yet they don't know that they need to come to the table with funds or that there's going to be extra expenses or whatever it is, those aren't buyers I want to deal with, right? Next question, what's your track record? How many deals are you doing each year? If it's not at least 7 to 12 deals consistently, then you're not a buyer I can consider to be a serious buyer that I can count on every time I get a deal. And question number 3, what's your buy box? Right? What price range, what area, what conditions, how much work are you comfortable taking on? I want to know exactly what it is that you like to buy so I can go find that and not anything else. Because when I can focus all my effort, I become that much more powerful with my marketing and that much more efficient with my money. So once you get all those questions answered, you can reverse engineer your marketing, you can reverse engineer your effort, you can reverse engineer everything and actually pick up what's going to work and what's going to get you paid the fastest. The worst thing you want to do is need to close a deal within the next 30 days and you're marketing in all the wrong areas of town. It's the worst effort of your time and capital. So when you know who your buyers are and what they want, every deal you chase is pretty much already pre-sold before you even talk to the seller. When you're talking to the seller, you know this deal is ready to rock. And that means a lot when you're going after this. So everything I'm teaching you in this video and way more, I break down into like great detail in the Prime Wealth Academy. in the mastermind that I run. So if you're interested in that, just set up a free strategy call with me. That's at pwmcall.com. And we'll hop on. And at the very least, you'll get a full analysis of your business. So we'll definitely see if this makes sense. But I give you all the nuts and bells and whistles on how to do this for every list possible, specific to your market. And not give you that nonsense people say, whoa, your market is oversaturated. No, you're just an idiot. Every market is good for this strategy. Every market works. So here's a mindset shift. You're not trying to pull a small list. You're trying to pull a motivated list, right? So niche list isn't about the size of the list. It's about the quality. What is the level of pain in that list? What is the level of motivation, the level of need in that list? That's what makes it a niche list. Every seller on a niche list has a need to sell. You understand? Every seller is done with the property. They don't want to deal with this anymore. Whatever the situation may be, they just don't want to manage it anymore. That is the motivation there. So if someone just wants to sell, you'll hear things like, yeah, we're seeing what offers come in, or if I don't get my number, I'll keep it. Those people are motivated. That's just a waste of your time. I'd rather you hear that, just hang up, move on. Don't be rude, right? But pretty much like that's the exit on those. You're marketing to the wrong list. If these people are motivated, you're marketing to the wrong list. We got to niche that list down more. There needs to be more pain factors. This means that the list sometimes will be really small. And by really small, I might mean like 12 to 15 leads a month. But if out of those 10 to 15 leads a month, you get one deal that makes you 70, 80 grand, who cares, right? At least I don't. How many of you would love to make at least 30 grand consistently a month with less than $500 in expenses? It's a tremendous difference, right? A motivated seller says, I need this gone. I can't keep it anymore. I'm behind. I just don't care. I'll let the bank take it. I'm just done with this. All that kind of language is the things that should be like a big flag for you of like, let's go, let's get this done. So when you're building your spearfish list, you're not marketing to 5 different motivations at once. You pick one big motivation and you go deep. You might choose, let's say, pre-foreclosures, pre-probates, absentees, tax delinquent owners. Those are your base list. But the real power comes when you stack the motivations. All right. So I hope this is making sense. Here's a quick little example. A pre-foreclosure that's vacant and absentee, that person's not shopping for offers, right? They're in pain. They need a solution fast. Or even better yet, they just gave up on the property. When we deal with a lot of people, this property that we're doing right now that we're making multiple 6 figures on, like 220, 250 on it, it's that situation. Nobody lives in it. They just gave up on it. That's it. Now, do we come across that type of deal every month? Hell no. This is the first deal we're ever going to do that's multiple 6 figures. We've done 6-figure deals. We've never done multiple 6 figures. You understand? Like, why? Because of the consistency. Because the person just is done with the property. So you go from hundreds of maybes to a handful of people who actually need your help. And in San Antonio, we use, I don't know, to market to about 18 properties a month. It's about it, 18. And from that, we were closing 6-figure spreads every single month because those 18 were handpicked for motivation. Now, out of those 18, we'd call that list and not many would answer. I don't need many to answer. I need 1 or 2 to answer. Because when we get those 1 or 2, guess what I do? I close. Because I know they're motivated. I know they need me. I don't get those 1 or 2 to answer and then spend the next 40 minutes trying to see if it's a deal. I already know it's a deal. I just need them to answer the phone. The small list gave us room to go deeper on every lead. Calling, texting, follow-up, even reaching out to the heirs if we can't get a hold of the main owner. That's why there's no competition at this level. Most people, I've spoken to wholesalers that they start, let's say, cold calling. They pull a list. They skip trace the list. And sometimes you get, it could be anywhere from 2 to 8 phone numbers per property. They just call the first phone number all the way down the list because they don't have time because they have hundreds of leads. Do you know how many times the last phone number available was the only phone number to the owner? way too many times. So again, because that was the case, what is the likelihood that I have competition with that lead? Very, very little. There might be one other person. And if I'm going toe to toe with anybody, I know nobody's willing to do what I do. I know nobody's willing to speak to the owner the way I speak to them. Now, let's clear something up. High margin doesn't mean high price. It means high motivation. So we made $130,000 profit on a $220,000 home. That's not a fancy high-end area. People think, oh, in order to make those six-figure deals, what do you need? Houses that are worth 800, 900 grand. If the houses are worth 8, 900, your entry-level wholesale should be six-figure. Easy. You understand? So you hitting multiple six figures, that should be almost like an every other month kind of situation. But it doesn't have to be. If you're in an area where the median is 250, 200, you can still hit six-figure deals in those areas. So don't tell yourself, my market's too cheap, or my market's too expensive, or my market's too competitive, or that John, that doesn't work here. Bullshit. This works everywhere. That's why I designed it this way, because it's based on your market and not based on the overall where the hotness is. It's irrelevant. The only two criteria I look for is, do people live there and are there houses? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, you got yourself a great market to market in. So data quality matters, but speed matters more. The closer you get to the source, the better. So any list that you pull, you want to go as close to the county data when you can and as you can. But what really wins is the speed to lead. So the faster you reach the seller, the less competition you're going to face. The longer that lead kind of sits there marinating, more people are likely to stumble on it, because when there's a distressed property, it's only a matter of time before it starts hitting multiple lists. And there's always somebody that's probably hitting one list more than another, and that lead will get there. I have a student right now hitting a property that's essentially on no list, but is about to be on damn near all the lists. And I told him, I'm like, dude, you got probably like a week's window to make sure you lock this in before somebody else comes in. You understand? Like, that is the speed that you need for these kind of properties. So everyone is waiting for third-party updates, like Deal Machine or PropStream or any of those things. That's fine. You'll just won't be the first one there. You understand? But if you get close to the source, and as soon as you get that lead, you skip trace and you call it immediately, you're going to be pretty early on those deals. And if you're early on those deals, your chances of higher profits go way up. So speed to lead beats the size of the list every single time. And then you need to specialize. So if you're doing foreclosures, probates, tax delinquent, absentees, all at once, you're doing none of them well. Because the way I'm going to approach my pre-foreclosures is not the same way I'm going to approach a pre-probate or a tax delinquent. You understand? The questions are going to be very different. The motivators are going to be very different. The way I incentivize them is going to be very different. And if I'm trying to bounce from one to the other, what's going to happen, and what has happened, is I'm going to speak to a pre-foreclosure, but I'm going to speak to them like I spoke to my tax delinquent, and I won't create enough urgency. So then they're going to feel like they got plenty of time. And then when I speak to a tax delinquent, I've been speaking to pre-foreclosures all day, I'm going to pressure the hell out of them and most likely piss them off. You understand? And I won't be as efficient on all of them as I can be if I pick one and just get dangerous inside that list. I'm talking about, I learned all the ins and out, all the objection, all the paperwork, all the patterns, everything for that type of seller. What possible objections can they give me? How can I get ahead of those objections before they give it to me? Before they come up with that objection, can I get ahead of them? Because if you can overcome an objection before they give it to you, they won't say it, but immediately they're like, holy crap, this person's in my head. Like, how'd they know I was concerned about that? You understand? Have you ever had a seller say to you, you're really upsetting me right now, because they're so overwhelmed, they're so stressed out. But if you notice that they're getting upset and you've been in the situation plenty of times, you know what that sounds like. And you say to them, look, I know this has to be upsetting. I know this is a moment that you're probably the most stressed out and frustrated. I get it. And I'm sorry you're going through that. But my job right now is to make sure that I don't see you lose your home. You understand? I get the frustration you have. It's not towards me. It's towards the bank. but it's there anyway. You understand? I'm here to help you. All of a sudden, you addressing their frustration before they do and blame you for it makes them think like, oh, shoot, he's right. Yeah, my frustration is towards the bank. And this person understands me. It's very different, guys. It's a whole different way of doing this that actually makes it easier to market. So once you do that, you'll see deals nobody else even recognizes. That's when your business finally feels predictable. You understand? You'll know exactly what list to pull, what it produces, how to scale it. People always ask about competition. John, what about all the wholesalers in this market? My market is so heavily saturated. I tell them, I don't care. Competition exists at the bottom, not at the top. If you have so much competition, it's probably because you're doing the lazy shit that everybody else does. You're doing your paper lead, you're doing the direct mail marketing, you're doing all that nonsense that's just saturated with competition. But when you do the stuff that we do, instead of blasting lists with the same script, because people use scripts, they think that's the key to everything, you're going to have competition. But when you build a very focused niche list of 20, maybe 30 deeply motivated sellers and personally contact them, you're playing in a league 99% of investors will never play. So we're still closing $50, $60, $100,000 deals every single month. And in one of the most competitive markets in Texas, San Antonio has been very saturated for a while now because people think, it's an affordable market, so everybody wants to go there. You understand? So, yet we crush it every single month. We do fine. You understand? Like we're not worried. We're not concerned about it. And a lot of my students are in just as competitive markets with the same level of results. So to recap, the spearfishing process is you pick one base list, right? Pre-foreclosure, pre-probates, tax delinquent, whatever it may be that fits your lane, that fits your market, because not every market are you going to do the same list for. These are market specific. Then you want to stack 2 to 3 motivators to those lists until the list shrinks to a few dozen names that are highly motivated. So again, 2 to 3 motivators, not 2 to 3 other random data points, 2 to 3 motivators. Then you're going to personally reach out to every single one of them and see what the need is. Where's the struggle? Where's the pain? Not the price. The price has nothing to do with this. If the price had to do something with this, we wouldn't be making multiple 6 figures on that deal, because we would have done whatever nonsense formula and we would have contracted it way too damn high. The only reason we're making that much money is because it has nothing to do with price. It has to do with the need. And then number 4, you want to move fast, specialize, go deep, and stay consistent. If you do that, it's just simple. You'll start seeing margins that don't even make sense to anyone. That's why we say this method prints money. And that's how you get that consistent deal flow, because the deals you close are so high margin that your whole business doesn't revolve around closing 5 to 10 deals a month and having multiple people on your team and having multiple list sources and having multiple avenues and barely being able to break even every month. So that's the full spearfishing method. Build your buyers list first, spearfish the sellers who match, and focus on motivation above everything else. And again, if you guys want any help with this inside your business and you want the shortcuts just to build this type of model within the next 6 months, just book a strategy call with me, right? pwmcall.com. Book a strategy call and we'll just get you rocking and rolling. We'll take a look at your market. I look at all data points and everything, because I don't assume you can do whatever. I look for data points that make sense for your market. And I look at what's available. I look at what's the opportunities in your market, and then we put a plan exactly for that.